what's up, everyone? This is Ren with Dance with My Demons podcast. Are you looking to start a podcast? Then let Buzzsprout be the way. Today is a great day to start your own podcast. Whether you're looking for a new marketing channel, have a message you want to share with the world, or just think it would be fun to have your own talk show. Podcasting is an easy, inexpensive, and fun way to expand your reach online. Buzzsprout is hands down the easiest and best way to launch, promote, and track your podcast. Your show could be online and listed on all the major podcast platforms like Apple Podcast, Spotify, Google Podcast, iHeartRadio, Stitcher, and many more, just within minutes of finishing your recording. Podcasting isn't hard when you have the right partners, and the team at Buzzsprout is passionate about helping you succeed. Join over 100,000 podcasters already using Buzzsprout to get their message out to the world. With Buzzsprout, you can create something great together. Follow the link in the show notes, which lets Buzzsprout know we sent you. Buzzsprout will send you a $20 Amazon gift card if you sign up for a paid plan, and it's sent after a second paid invoice. And it helps support our show as well. Buzzsprout, the best way to create a great and professional podcast. Later.
Hey, what's up? I'm Ren, the host of Dance with My Demons podcast. Are you looking to start a podcast? Then let Anchor be the way. With Anchor's creation tools, you can record and edit right from your smartphone and personal computer. Anchor offers 100% free hosting and distribution, so you can be heard on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and many more. Anchor allows you to make money from your podcast with no minimum listenership. Who doesn't want to make money, right? Anchor has everything you need to make a successful podcast all in one place. Anchor, the easiest way to make a podcast ever. Just download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started. And don't forget to check out my podcast at anchor.fm/dancingwithmydemons69 and on Spotify, Dancing with My Demons. See you all soon. Later. Bye.
Hey, what's up, everyone? This is Ren with Dance with My Demons podcast. This is episode 16, and I've entitled it Off the Cuff. In this particular episode, I don't really have a particular bullet point that I'm working with or actually something I'm actually focused on. This episode is actually started because of a road trip my fiance and I took today, or for this weekend. We actually came out to Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, which is actually a very interesting city. It's very beautiful in the dark when the lights are out. But we just thought we'd take a nice trip out. And on the road trip here, like from our home to here, is about 5 hours. And with a lot of time on the road, I guess my fiance had a couple questions. And I guess that's where this episode is kind of coming out of. One of the questions he asked me was, did I always know from my childhood that I was bipolar? Was it something that I always knew? And the truth is, I really didn't. It wasn't something that I really noticed a difference in myself and how my life was until I was much older. Now, mind you, I'm 51 now, and when I was diagnosed, it was about 12 years ago. So I was in my late 30s at that time when I was first diagnosed. And so it wasn't until then, maybe in my earlier 30s, I saw signs. But when I think back, and it's a very normal question to ask, because I know after being diagnosed, I asked those questions of myself. Did I know? You know, did other people know? Were there signs that other people saw that I didn't? Or were there signs that, maybe I saw, I just didn't know what it was? I know there's a million questions that were going on in my head after I was diagnosed. first one I think is the obvious, which most people ask, is like, am I crazy? And then once you come to terms with it and you accept reality of what it is and what you're dealing with, you realize that you're not crazy, and you come to understand the diagnosis and what it is that you're dealing with and how you manage it, and you realize you're not crazy. It's just an illness that you have to manage. No different than, say, somebody with diabetes, or let's just say somebody who was diagnosed with cancer. It's something that you have to manage, something that you have to work with, something you have to be treated with. These are all things that you just have to juggle and you have to, to deal with. But I know those questions were very much, in my mind at the time, especially early on when I was diagnosed, was, did I know? And in my childhood, I don't feel like, like I really knew then. I feel like I lived a very carefree childhood, and my only real focus as a kid was just about having fun and being with friends and my family and goofing around and just being a kid. I don't really remember too much of my life in terms of like depression or anxiety or anything like that. I think I just viewed myself, or I saw, when I think back to my life as a kid, it was just being a kid. And so I don't really remember signs of it, any type of anxieties or depression or anything of that nature, until I was much older. I would have to say in my 30s at least, that I could remember clearly about, was maybe dealing with those types of symptoms when I was in my 30s. Dealing with depression or struggles, and I probably didn't even know what I was dealing with then. I probably thought in my mind that they were just the struggles of my life, things that maybe have been going well in my life or things that maybe had not been going well in my life. I just probably figured it was just the struggles I was dealing with. It wasn't until much later on, and I've said it in my Genesis episode, my very first episode. The trigger for me that stands out the most is obviously the end of my marriage. The separation, the initial separation, was the trigger that kind of set things off, or maybe set things into motion for a then downward spiral, which I've spoken about in my very first episode or two. But looking back, to my childhood, I don't recall any real signs. I wish I could. I wish I could sit here and tell everybody out there like I knew specifically this is what I was dealing with. In reality, I really didn't. Now that I'm much older, I don't think I've spoken about this in any previous episode, but if I haven't, I guess I'll speak about it now. I do have a sibling that also deals with bipolar as well, and we've spoken about it. We've dealt with it together. We've, I guess, managed it together, and we've been a big part of each other's lives and how we cope and deal with it. And we've definitely leaned on each other in dealing with the illness together. And I know that in a future episode, we will do an episode together, my sibling and I, to speak further about our mental illness together. But when I think about any others, I know that there are other members of my family that may be dealing with mental illness, but I know that I haven't had personal conversations with them to be able to speak about that. But I know, just from speaking within other family members, that it does exist within my family. My other sibling and myself aren't the only ones who are dealing with this. We know that there are others. It just hasn't been something that has come up where we've actually spoken directly with those other family members and dealing with it. But I know, there are, obviously you have thoughts about it and in relation with them, and is it something that, is it something that we inherit, or is it something that just happened, or, how did this all come about, or definitely questions that played out in our lives. And I know it's definitely something that I think about or have thought about in my life. Is it something that was always there? Is it something that, that you inherit or something that is passed down to you? Those are definitely questions that are that you ask yourself. And when you're dealing with these, a situation like ours, or a situation like myself is dealing with a mental illness. So it's definitely questions that are asked, and it's a pretty fair question, to ask yourself. Like I said, there's a million questions that are going on in your head, especially when you're first diagnosed, because you're kind of coming to grips with the reality of it and wondering, what's going on. And like I said, it's like you even ask yourself the rawest of questions, like, are you crazy? And what's going on? And what's happening? And did you always know? And, can other people see you? And did they know? And just questions like that play a big part in your reality, and when you're coming to grips with it all, especially early on. Now that it's been about 12 years for me, not so much anymore. I've definitely settled into a better understanding of what I'm dealing with, at least as best as I can, in comparison to the very beginning, where I was filled with questions and uncertainty and wondering what was going on with me. And, were there answers in other areas of my life? Like I said, was it something with my parents? Was it something with my siblings? Was it something, in other parts of my family? It's just questions like that definitely pop up. And, it's for people out there that are just getting newly diagnosed or still coming to terms with it, don't feel like the questions that you have are like out of the norm or very strange or anything. They're very normal questions to have for yourself and to wonder. It's something new. Having a mental illness or dealing with bipolar is I always look at it as, and the way it's been explained to me, it's no different than somebody dealing with diabetes or even somebody who's been diagnosed with cancer. It's something that you have to battle. It's something that you have to manage through treatment. And in our case, through medication and through therapy and through, there's just a lot of aspects, in your how you manage your everyday life. These are all, variables and things that we have to deal with in our everyday life to be able to manage our lives. So it is, these are very good questions to have and very good questions to ask yourself and to be able to ask others. I see it a lot in the support groups, lots of different questions, and people questioning about having the ability to manage a job, and why can't they manage a job when others can. And like myself, I've never really had an issue with managing work, and to me it's always just come like natural and okay. And I guess it's because it's the schedule of it and the routine of it that makes it easy for me to do it. It's being that routine and scheduling is so important to me, and it plays such a big part in my life and how I manage my life. I think work has always just been, good because it's a routine type of thing. And in all honesty, for myself, even when I was at my lowest of points, work was always the one outlet that just always managed to work out for me. I've always seemed to thrive in work, and I've always found success through work. But I know that there are others out there that struggle, and I wish I had answers for these other folks out there that are questioning themselves. But the God's honest truth, I really don't. I think what works for one person might be totally different for another. How it affects them, how they view things, what's going on in their mind, what's happening in their brain chemistry and in their bodies. It seems to me it's just totally different from person to person. And I see the different effects it has on different people, on a personal level, and also, from going through these groups and speaking about it and being in therapy and going through these different processes. You see the big differences that people have, and it's very, very different from person to person. Though there might be some similarities in how we are, but the essence of it is very different from one person to another and how they deal with it. I see people I know because I've dealt with this on a personal level, dealing with managing medication. And in the past I have struggled, and it's still a struggle, but I've been fortunate lately to have a good support group and have my fiance and people to really watch my back and to make sure that I stay on top of it. But I know in the past I have struggled and I have relapsed and I've been off my meds, and it's always this, this unrealistic feeling that you have control when in reality you really don't. But I read about it and I see it with people that they at least try to manage a life without it, and how they do it I'm not really sure, because when I think back to my time without taking medication, it was a real struggle, and it was pretty detrimental to my life at those times, because it put me in some pretty rough spots. So I don't know how these individuals do it. The only way I guess I would know is if I was that person, because I can only speak about myself. I can't tell you how the next person's feeling. I couldn't even tell you how my sibling deals with it. Only by her words could I possibly know on how she, functions or how she manages with it. For me, it's totally different. And I know in an upcoming episode, we're going to speak about that, my sibling and I, so I'm sure you'll get further information on what goes on and what a big difference it is from person to person. So, I felt it really important to talk about this, even though it's very off the cuff and no real rhyme or reason or topic to go by. I thought it'd be really important to talk about the different things that I spoke about in this episode, because there are things that are just going on in my head and they need to come out some way. And if it helps other people in the process, then that's great, because that's always the second thing to me of importance. First being the voice and getting out what I need to get out, but having the ability to help others is always a plus as well. So with that being said, I hope everybody out there has a great weekend. Stay healthy, stay strong in mind, but most of all, don't let the demons get you down. Later.
I hope you enjoyed this week's episode. I'll be back with an all-new episode very soon. Until then, you can catch past episodes of Dance with My Demons podcast on anywhere you listen to your favorite podcast on. You can also catch me on Instagram at Dance with My Demons 69, on Facebook, Dance with My Demons podcast, on X at DWMD podcast 69. And also, if you or somebody you know is going through an emotional or mental crisis, 988 is the National Suicide Lifeline. Keep that in mind. We're all in this together, and everybody needs each other's help. So until then, stay strong in mind, stay strong in heart, but most of all, don't let the demons get you down. Later.